The night air over Queens, New York was heavy with rain. Visibility had dropped to just 3 miles. Water stood on the tarmac of LaGuardia Airport, one of the busiest and most congested pieces of aviation real estate in the United States. Earlier that night, LaGuardia Airport had posted on social media that weather conditions were already causing flight disruptions. The stage was already set for chaos before the first alarm ever sounded. At 11:18 p.m., United Airlines Flight 384, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, bound for O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, aborted its takeoff from LaGuardia twice after anti-ice warning lights came on, and declared an emergency after the crew noticed a foul odor in the cabin. That was the first domino. A crew in distress, an odor no one could explain, passengers on board feeling sick. Without an open gate for the United flight, an airport firefighting truck and a stair truck were dispatched to assist the aircraft. The truck rolled. The crew moved. They had a job to do, and they moved quickly to do it. What happened next would shake the aviation world to its foundation. Air Canada Express Flight 8646 and a fire truck collided on LaGuardia's Runway 4 at around 11:45 p.m., killing the 2 pilots and injuring about 40 people on board and 2 people in the truck. The flight was a routine regional route, a regularly scheduled international passenger flight from Montreal Trudeau International Airport in Quebec, Canada, to LaGuardia Airport in New York City, operated by Jazz Aviation under the brand Air Canada Express. There was nothing unusual about it on paper. 72 passengers, 4 crew members, a Bombardier CRJ-900 regional jet cutting through the rainy New York night. It was supposed to land, park, and empty. People would collect their bags, go home, sleep. Instead, at 11:37 p.m., air traffic control cleared Truck 1 to cross Runway 4 at Taxiway D, Delta, while the Air Canada Express aircraft was already on short final to that same runway. 2 clearances, 1 runway, a catastrophic overlap of decisions made within seconds of each other in a crowded, rain-soaked control environment. The recordings tell the story with brutal clarity. In the air traffic control audio, a controller can be heard requesting permission to cross the runway. Moments later, that same controller is heard repeatedly telling Truck 1 to stop. The words came out fast, desperate, like a soldier screaming a warning that arrives a half-second too late. "Stop, Truck 1, stop," the transmission said. "Stop, stop, stop, stop. Truck 1, stop, stop, stop. Stop, Truck 1, stop." Those words hung in the air over the Queen's night. They changed nothing. The aircraft struck the fire truck head-on, completely ripping off the nose of the plane. Security camera video shows the aircraft striking the rear right side of the truck with significant force, causing the truck to roll over. It appears the truck saw the jet just before impact and unsuccessfully tried to turn out of the way. The CRJ-900 was still moving fast. The plane was traveling at about 100 miles per hour when the collision occurred. Inside the cabin, it was immediate and violent. Passengers on the plane described feeling the aircraft brake hard immediately after touchdown, followed by a loud bang that threw people against their seats and into the cabin interior. Passenger Clément Lelièvre remembered the pilot hitting the brakes suddenly. His head hit the seat ahead of him. Then it looked like everything at the front of the aircraft was collapsing. He said he believed the pilots had reacted, that someone up front had seen what was coming and tried to stop it. He told reporters he did not know all the circumstances, but believed the pilot had incredible reflexes and had saved lives. But in the cockpit, there was no saving anyone. The aircraft's cockpit and forward galley sections were destroyed, resulting in the deaths of both pilots. Their names were Antoine Forest and Mackenzie Gunther. Antoine Forest was 30 years old, from Coteau-du-Lac, Quebec, a small city southwest of Montreal, about 20 kilometers east of the Ontario border. He had been flying since the age of 16. His great-aunt Jeanette Gagné said he was always taking courses in flying. He never stopped. He began flying smaller bush planes, moved to twin-engine aircraft, and eventually joined Jazz Aviation as a first officer. He was the captain that night, in command of 76 lives in the rain above Queens. His brother Cedric posted a tribute saying Antoine was always thinking of his next adventure, and that he had encouraged him with the words, "Have a good flight." a phrase they had heard often, but which would be the last. Mackenzie Gunther was the first officer. Seneca Polytechnic, his alma mater, confirmed he had graduated from the Honors Bachelor of Aviation Technology program in 2023. Through the Jazz Aviation Pathways program, he had joined Jazz Aviation immediately after graduation and began his professional flying career. Two young men, both Canadian, both at the very beginning of what should have been long careers. The Federal Aviation Administrator described them as young men at the start of their career, calling their deaths an absolute tragedy. Back on the tarmac, the scene that emergency crews found was one of wreckage and survival running side by side. Photos and videos from the scene showed severe damage to the front of the CRJ-900 aircraft, with cables and debris hanging from a mangled cockpit. Nearby, a damaged emergency vehicle lay on its side. One flight attendant, seated in a jump seat just behind the cockpit door, had been ejected from the aircraft during the collision. She was strapped into her seat when she fell through an opening in the severed aircraft. Her daughter told Canadian media that her mother had multiple fractures on one leg and would need surgery, but was otherwise alive, and called it a total miracle. 41 passengers, crew, and aircraft rescue and firefighting officers were taken to area hospitals. The two Port Authority officers in the emergency vehicle suffered broken bones. One passenger suffered a brain bleed. Most others had broken bones and bruises. Port Authority Executive Director Catherine Garcia said at a news briefing that 32 had been released, but that there were also serious injuries. The airport itself went dark. LaGuardia was closed for 14 hours, its runways sealed and its airspace silent. Hundreds of flights were canceled or diverted. It was the airport's first fatal crash in 3 decades. New York Governor Kathy Hochul stood before cameras in Queens and described it as a disaster, the likes of which had not been seen there in that same span of time. In the hours that followed, investigators moved in like soldiers taking ground. The NTSB and the Port Authority cut a hole in the roof of the plane to access both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. The two devices were driven back to NTSB labs in Washington, D.C., and officials confirmed the cockpit voice recorder was not damaged. Every piece of wreckage, every cable, every twisted fragment of metal became evidence. NTSB chair Jennifer Homendy said there was a lot of debris, that it was all evidence, and that investigators needed to document everything before they could collect it. The air traffic controller at the center of the sequence of events was heard on the frequency after the collision. Audio later released by media outlets captured a controller saying, "I messed up" on the frequency shortly after the collision. A Frontier Airlines pilot who had witnessed the collision from the runway radioed back that the controller had done the best he could. Questions were immediate about staffing in the tower. At the time of the incident, a single air traffic controller was handling both ground control and air control at LaGuardia Airport, although 2 air traffic controllers were working at the airport at the time. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the report of only 1 controller in the tower was not accurate, but offered no further detail on staffing numbers. Former FAA Vice President Michael McCormick said it was both significant and concerning, noting there is usually at least 1 controller directing ground traffic and at least 1 directing arrivals and departures. Duffy also said air traffic control systems could not fully modernize until Congress funded that effort, calling it neither a partisan issue nor a bite-sized fix. The wreckage on Runway 4 had become more than a crash site. It had become a symbol of every delayed reform, every unfilled controller position, every budget conversation that never reached a conclusion. Passenger Rebecca LaCory, who had been on board Flight 8646, said what many others were thinking. She said she felt the pilots try to brake before the impact, felt them fight for the plane in those final seconds. She said she was forever indebted to the pilots, that they were the reason she was able to make it home to see her boys, and that her heart went out to their families. LaGuardia Airport reopened at 2 p.m. Monday with a single runway, Runway 4, the runway where Antoine Forest and Mackenzie Gunther made their last landing, remained closed until Friday morning. The debris field was too vast, the evidence too important, the story too unfinished. What stood on that tarmac in the rain was not just wreckage, it was the wreckage of 2 lives given entirely to the sky. and the lingering question of whether the systems built to protect them had failed at the moment they were needed most.